Welcome. Today, we will be learning about how to use both direct and indirect object pronouns in the same sentence in Spanish. Just a quick note, in this lesson I will be using the abbreviations IO for indirect object and DO for direct object. Now let's begin. First, let's review on how to create direct object pronouns in Spanish. We can do this by using the following chart. For me, it will be me in Spanish. Same spelling, different pronunciation. For the informal you, it will be te. Him, her, and the formal you will be lo or la, depending on if it's masculine or feminine. For us, it will be nos. For the informal you all, it will be os. And lastly, them and the formal you will be los, las. A quick thing to note is that lo, la, and los, las do not just refer to him, her, and the formal you or you all. It can also refer to animals or objects. Next, let's review indirect object pronouns. The chart that we created for the direct object pronoun will also be the same as indirect object, except for the him, her formal you form and the them formal you all form. Instead of being lo, la, and los, las, it will change to le and les. Notice that both le and les does not specify whether it's masculine or feminine, making its meaning or what it's referring to ambiguous. However, you will see that when writing in Spanish, you can add a prepositional phrase for clarity. So if le was referring to a boy named Lucas in the sentence, tú le compras un cuaderno, we would add the prepositional phrase a Lucas to the sentence, making it tú le compras un cuaderno a Lucas. The prepositional phrase isn't necessary and you won't always see it in the sentence. It just removes the ambiguity of le and les and gives us details as to what those pronouns are referring to. To apply both of these charts to sentences, first identify the direct object pronoun and the indirect object pronoun. The direct object will be directly receiving the verb's action, while the indirect object will be whom the direct object is going to. Let's use the following example. Yo compro un regalo para él. The direct object is un regalo because it is directly receiving the action of the verb. The indirect object is él because this person is receiving the direct object. So, we replace the direct object with the pronoun lo, because el regalo is masculine, and we replace the indirect object with the pronoun le, because the person receiving el regalo is él. Next, we need to determine which pronoun comes first in the pair. In terms of which one goes first, this is the absolute rule in Spanish. You will always put the indirect object pronoun in front of the direct object pronoun. Always. And they will remain next to each other with nothing in the sentence going in between the two. So the correct way to write the pronouns would be le, lo. But wait a second, it doesn't sound quite right to say le, lo. Thus, let me introduce another rule. If you ever have both the indirect object and direct object starting with an L right next to each other, you need to change the indirect object pronoun le or les to se. You will never change the direct object pronoun, only the indirect object pronoun. So in the phrase le lo, you must change the indirect object pronoun to se, making the phrase se lo. Here's one last thing to remember when using both the indirect object and direct object pronoun in the same sentence. You need to place the pair in between the subject and the verb, such as in the example, yo se lo compro. Now if the sentence were made negative with a word such as no or nunca, then the pair would be put in between the negative word and the verb. So if I made the sentence negative, it would then become yo no se lo compro. So, let's practice with one more example to make sure we understand this process. The sentence is, nosotros dimos a ellos las botellas. First, we identify that los botellas is the direct object. And we identify that the indirect object is a ellos. We now exchange the direct object las botellas for the direct object pronoun las, and we exchange the indirect object a ellos for les. Make sure the order is always indirect object pronoun, then direct object pronoun. Since we cannot have two L's back to back, we change the indirect object pronoun from les to se, making the phrase now se las. Then, we take the pair se las and put it in between the subject and verb, making our final sentence, nosotros se las dimos. And that is how you use double object pronouns in Spanish. Thank you for watching.